So I watched my first Michael Moore documentary, and I have to say I was pretty impressed. It's, you can see here, Michael Moore's Planet of the Humans asks, what if green energy cannot save the planet? So as environmentalists celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day this week, a new documentary poses a sobering question. What if wind farms, solar panels, and other green energy projects are not enough to save the planet and humanity simply cannot sustain life as we know it? Planet of the Humans, executively produced by award-winning filmmaker Michael Moore, and written and directed by Jeff Gibbs, asks hard questions about what it sees as the failure of well-meaning efforts to halt climate change. So, Planet of the Humans has been released for free on YouTube, and I actually would encourage you to watch it. It argues that the mainstream environmental movement has sold out to corporate interests, and that solar and wind energy components and electric cars rely too heavily on deforestation and electricity generated from coal and natural gas to produce them. A lot of us have pointed out this hypocrisy for a long time, but it's interesting how criticism is only listened to from the inside. You know, as an outsider, I criticize it, and, that's a Fox News talking point. And I think, I don't even own a television. How could it be a Fox News talking point? It's just the facts. But internal criticism, and this is the sort of internal policing, it's kind of refreshing to see on the left because it's gone, or it hasn't been there. They never criticize their own, and that's how it's almost become like crazy and cultish. It's like any sort of nonsense, as long as it's perceived as liberal, it's okay. We allow it. So the article goes on, what we have been calling green, renewable energy, and industrial civilization are one and the same thing. And it is, and they do a good job of showing this. The problem I see is Gibbs suggests a better approach would be people having fewer children. Infinite growth on a finite planet is suicide, he says. Okay, so we've kind of heard this argument before. First of all, I'll point out we produce 25% more food than it would take to feed the whole of humanity, so we're not anywhere near running out of food. If you remember peak oil in 2008, it was something like $145 a barrel, and everyone said, there's a finite amount of fossil fuels in the ground. Well, now the price of oil is way down there. I mean, to the point where we have so much oil due to the shutdown and collapse in demand, people are paying other people to take their oil off of their hands because there's nowhere left to store it. We're swimming in oil. So that's a weakness of the film. Don't buy into the population control angle. But the multi-year film project includes interviews with scientists, industrialists, and environmental activists, visits to wind farms, solar installations, and biomass plants, and an in-depth look at the companies that collaborate and invest in green energy initiatives. And these were pretty good. Like, they go to these places and realize, we built all these solar panels. How do you build a solar panel? Well, you have to get quartz. It's not sand. Sand isn't pure enough. So you have to do traditional quartz mining. Well, that involves destruction of the environment. Solar panels also take a great deal of coal, actually, to make. They build these big fields of solar panels that deteriorate. They don't last forever and have to be replaced with new solar panels. And then on top of that, they're only good when the sun is shining. And so you actually have to have fossil fuel power plants running in the background all of the time because it takes too much energy to have them start up every time the clouds move in. The biomass plants are even more interesting because it's actually very profitable for the timber industry because they take anything. They can call almost anything biomass. So they're clear-cutting forests down, and they chip up the trees and say it's a biomass plant. They mix it with tires because it's hard to get wet wood to burn. They mix it with garbage. They're actually burning garbage, calling it biomass, and getting this green energy certification stamp. And environmentalists show up at the opening of these things and they clap their hands and pat each other on the back. Moore said that he, like many people, thought electric cars were a good idea, but I didn't really think about where is the electricity coming from. And this is kind of the simple childlike view you get from a lot of liberals. Okay, so you're not burning gas. You've got a battery. What charges that battery? The electric grid. Where do we get electricity? Coal. You're not doing the environment any favors. And then you have the batteries the batteries die and have to be replaced. Who disposes of the batteries? It's just more industrial waste. I thought it was pretty interesting how they connected the green movement and these green eco-warriors, the prominent ones, to big corporations. This is why you don't ever trust an astroturfed movement. The Pride movement is another example that's focused on population control, but that's a different issue. But don't fall for these astroturf movements. The big guys connected in the environmental movement are getting millions and billions of dollars from big companies to basically, it's another form of corporate competition. And he shows how these guys get invited on Stephen Colbert and everyone laughs and cheers for them. They show up and they speak on college campuses and people nod solemnly, and it's all this silly act. You got to dig in. You got to look behind what's behind the surface here. I particularly enjoyed seeing Van Jones at an environmental rally being put on the spot, asking him his opinion on biomass. And he had to just respond, well, I don't really know. I'm not up to speed on that one quite yet. And it's like he's an actor, guys. He's just playing pretend. And so all this must be pretty uncomfortable for a lot of the greenies. And so how do they respond to this? Climate experts call for, quote, dangerous Michael Moore film to be taken down. You don't say. We don't like the science in the books, so burn the books. Just more suppression and censorship by the left. As I point out, the utopia, assuming such a thing could exist, is not going to be based on a web of lies. We have to get to the truth. We have to talk about these sorts of things. If the green movement, if the environmental movement has been infiltrated by corporate interests and the technology itself isn't viable, then it's time to take a different route. It's time, everybody wants a clean earth. That's one of the disingenuous things I see on the left is they always assume the right just wants to pollute the air. And it's like, no, we actually don't. We just want real solutions instead of magic and wishes and fairy dust. So, a new Michael Moore produced documentary that takes aim at the supposed hypocrisy of the green movement is dangerous and misleading and destructive and should be removed from public viewing according to an assortment of climate scientists and environmental campaigners. Why would scientists be opposed to truth? Maybe it'll affect their grant money. They criticize it and say it's full of misinformation. Films for Action, an online library of videos, temporarily took down the film after describing it as, quote, full of misinformation, though they later reinstated it, saying they did not want accusations of censorship to give the film more power and mystique than it deserves. But you notice there's no criticism of the facts he raises, the actual issues that he raises. Like I took a straight-on criticism of his overpopulation theory. It's bunk. I gave you numbers, right? There's no one here saying, well, the climate movement actually hasn't been co-opted by corporate interests. They just have to say that's dangerous. Dangerous to what? Dangerous to who? The truth is dangerous? Dangerous to your tithing that you receive from your millions of brainwashed followers, maybe. A letter written by Josh Fox, who made the documentary Gasland and signed by various scientists and activists, has urged the removal of the, quote, shockingly misleading and absurd film for making false claims about renewable energy. Planet of the Humans trades in debunked fossil fuel industry talking points. Oh, of course. That question affordability, reliability of solar and wind energy, the letter states, pointing out that these alternatives are now cheaper to run than fossil fuels such as coal. Okay, first of all, they take coal to produce. You have to have coal plants in the background for when the wind stops blowing or the sun stops shining. Why can't there be legitimate criticism? Michael Mann, the famous climate scientist and a signatory to Fox's letter, said the film includes various distortions, half-truths, and lies, kind of like your models. Aren't we supposed to be out of Arctic ice by now, Michael Mann? He continues to say the filmmakers have done a grave disservice to us and the planet by promoting climate change and activist tropes and talking points. They're not actually tropes and talking points. They're facts. Like, he does do a good job. There is this connection to big timber. There is this, they are burning tires. They are burning garbage. And it all gets called green energy. It's one big interest. It's a fight over money. It's still just a fight over money. And so it's just one special interest power struggle versus another interest power struggle. And this is why I say you've got to stay focused on what is true and what is not true. We're not going to get progress, if you like that word, through lying. We're not going to get our truth, our solutions. There is none of that. There's either true or not true. And stay focused on that. Stay focused on the virtue of truth-telling. Yeah, sometimes the truth hurts. But the alternative is living in a society where now it's the scientists that are burning the books.